Hi there, this is Thomas Allenberg announcing that our tube saves the world. I'm Thomas Allenberg and I'm speaking to you from Waikiki, Honolulu, Hawaii. It is February 16th, 2008, and I'm trying to get my message across to three men in CNN. Lou Dobbs, who is a wonderful, courageous, brave Thomas Paine type character in our history right now, very much like Thomas Paine was originally in American history, in that he is sounding the call for those of us who have not completely fallen asleep yet under the brainwashing and incessant programming of the rest of the sleeping culture. I'm trying to get my message across to Lou Dobbs, Jack Cafferty, Bill Maher, isn't he great, and Wolf Blitzer, who actually I've been compared to by some of my friends because I am an outspoken, recently retired public school teacher who has spent his entire life, all the way back from 1968 when I joined the American Peace Corps and volunteered to serve in the Amazon at a school in El Pilar, Estado Sucre. I also then went from the Peace Corps, where I learned a lot about the way America was being viewed by the Third World, especially by socialist villages in the Amazon, villages that were still somewhat tribal in nature, how they saw us as the oppressor. I went into the teacher corps in San Francisco and then taught my entire life from 1971 until 2 years ago when I took early retirement to write my book about my neo experience in the matrix that we affectionately and not so now affectionately call public education. There are more and more of us educators who have devoted our lives to the children of America, who are waking up, scratching our heads like Lou Dobbs so often does during his broadcasts, and asking ourselves, how in the world did we get in such a mess? And when I say mess, I'm talking about the idea that we are in a culture that is not allowing us anymore to think freely. It's a culture that doesn't encourage free thinking. It encourages conformity and so-called normality. It encourages a culture of celebrity idealization. It encourages a culture of consumeristic hyper-capitalism, and it begins this new Orwellian Brave New World campaign early on in school. I would very much like to get a hold of Lou Dobbs or anyone of his stature who has any kind of say in the media still, and who is still bravely holding up the torch of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and what's left of the American dream for the public to hear, because we've got to pull our ostrich heads out of the sand, and we have got to take a good hard look at how we, our generation, the 20th century generation, how we are raising, i.e. educating our youth. And let me tell you, from a vantage point of a lifetime of dedication to public education, that we are doing a huge disservice to our children and to our country and to our future in the way that we are educating them. We are treating them like the proverbial Uncle Tom in Uncle Tom's Cabin. The chains that we are putting around their legs, the chains, are monetary, they're mental, they're emotional, they're cultural, they're invisible, but they're chains nevertheless, and they're chaining our youth to some thought systems some paradigms that are absolutely destroying us as a people, as a nation, and even individually as spiritual entities. They're corrupting our souls and turning us into what George Orwell and those great writers of the 20th century saw as a possibility, that we would be turned into zombied out lemmings. You know, back in the 30s, Goebbels, the propaganda minister for Hitler, told him that if they could put a television in every single living room in Germany, they would have the mind of the country. And then, once they had the mind of the country, if they could shock them with, like, the Reichstag fire, or shock them with some terrible, terrible, frightening event like the 9/11 experience for all of us, the people would then submit to a silent dictatorship. They would allow their democracy to be converted into a dictatorship without so much as a peep. They would become the proverbial cultural Uncle Toms, in the sense that they would serve the system, even though the system had gone over to, as they say in Star Wars, gone over to the dark side. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon to see that our so-called leaders have gone over to this proverbial dark side. They're serving greed. They're serving their self-interest. They're serving an old paradigm of military conquest, and they are serving lies. So anyway, when I was in the public school system, I woke up and I realized the connection between the dumbing down of our country and what we were doing in the name of education. I wrote a book, which is online, called Uncle Tom's Classroom: How One Public School Teacher Awakened His Students to the Cosmic Super Self Within. On the back, I wrote, "Throw off your chains, set yourself free. Remember the quantum field master you were created to be." Because ultimately, even quantum physics right now agrees with many New Age thinkers and positive thinkers, and many of our founding fathers who were metaphysicians and quite mystically oriented, that we are actually creating our own culture. We're creating our own society. Each of us individually is contributing to that society in how we interface with reality. And if we become an Uncle Tom, which is why I put this here as the title, we are no longer adding our free spirit and our free ideas and our ingenuity and our inner genius to the society and uplifting the society. We are instead supporting our invisible dictatorship that has now taken over our society. What I did in the public school system was, my first step of awakening was when I realized that we were using fear to squish out every bit of a child's inner joyful exuberance and natural proclivity for thinking for themselves. We start in kindergarten, and unfortunately now parents who have to work 3 jobs are sending their children to school, even in pre-K and early child care, and they're herded. Children are learning to live as a herd instead of as individual free thinkers who are representative of the best of the American dream. Children are learning to think of themselves as part of a herd, and as they go through kindergarten all the way up through the 8th grade and then into high school and into the university system, they are stratified into A students and F students, and smart, athletic, and the failures. And then they enter society with those blinders on, and they are not free thinkers, they are Uncle Toms. I'm going to have to continue this on a follow-up video, but this is on www.uncletomsclassroom.com, and it's just the beginning of opening the conversation to how we can free our children from the brainwashing of the old paradigm